Let's talk about Jeffrey Dahmer and the Netflix series. This is my first video in a little while and it's going to be just a little bit different. It's good to be back and thanks for watching. If you're watching this, you'll most likely have seen the latest Netflix series on Jeffrey Dahmer. If you're watching this, you'll most likely have seen the latest Netflix series and the related criticism that it's gained online. I tried so hard to watch it, but after everything I'd heard about it, I found it really difficult to stick with to the end. The producers didn't seek permission from the victims' families before filming, and they took artistic license with some of the content as well. Dahmer, otherwise known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, lured men back to his flat before killing them and ate some of their body parts. Dahmer, his family, and the families of his victims have spoken widely about their experience. The families of some of the victims have hit out at that Netflix series, saying that it simply wasn't like that. I'm Dr. Catherine Hughes from CrimeSake, which is a small independent business offering online tuition and coaching in criminal and forensic psychology and offender profiling. If you are enjoying this video, it would really help if you could click like and subscribe. Check out my website, which is in the description. You can browse a collection of training, tuition, games and books on offer. Jeffrey Dahmer was one of the most notorious serial killers in the history of the United States. He murdered 17 people between 1978 and 1991. He was arrested and sentenced to prison, and while he was in prison, he was murdered by another inmate. Professionals speculated that he had a number of disorders, including borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, psychotic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, substance use disorder, and other diagnoses as well. Later there was speculation that he may have had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, which today is known as schizoaffective disorder. I don't need to go over every detail of the case because there are plenty of online resources that go into that. I'm going to talk very briefly about the differences between what actually happened and what they depicted in the Netflix series. It's been widely publicised that Glenda Cleveland is depicted as living next door to Dahmer and that she could hear several noises coming from him and that she reported him several times. Cleveland actually lived in the building opposite and called police after her niece and her daughter came across 14-year-old victim Konorak Synthasenphone after he escaped from Dahmer's apartment. However, Dahmer convinced the cops to return him, and Cleveland made multiple phone calls to the law enforcement, including the FBI. Yet the scenes that depict the police commenting about being deloused after being in a gay man's apartment did happen. Also, the threatening phone calls that the police officers made to the Synthasenphone family were confirmed by the police chief, Philip Areola. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reports that it was a woman called Pamela Bass who told the story of Dahmer offering her a sandwich which she feared had human meat in. There's one particularly disturbing scene in the series of Dahmer on Netflix, drinking a bag of blood. He did work at the blood plasma centre, but he didn't steal and drink a bag of blood. However, Dahmer did confess to stealing a small vial and taking it onto the facility's roof and tasting it before spitting it out on the rooftop. Some of Dahmer's victims managed to escape and didn't become one of his murder victims. One of those men, Ronald Flowers, is depicted in the series of being saved because Dahmer's grandmother decided to stay with him until he was all right. Flowers did go to the grandmother's house and he was under the belief that Dahmer was helping him to jump his car battery. Dahmer offered him alcohol, causing Flowers to get suspicious and upset. Dahmer offered him coffee instead, drugging Flowers in the process. Dahmer had said that he decided against killing Flowers because his would-be victim weighed 250 pounds and his body would have been very challenging to move. There are other smaller details that were not true in the series, such as the number of locks on the door, the policemen receiving an award, the families present in the courtroom, and possibly many more other smaller details. This case was so shocking and had so many shocking elements that it didn't need to be embellished in any way. To give a very brief psychological of Dahmer, it's important to look at his upbringing. Dahmer was born in 1960. His father was a chemical engineer. His mother suffered from hysteria, depression, suicidal ideation, and psychosomatic illnesses. When he was 5, they had another child, David. His father worked very long hours, and his mother struggled with mental illnesses as well as having another child to take care of. But this resulted in Jeffrey Dahmer feeling more and more isolated. His parents had a troubled marriage. Dahmer described himself as being surrounded by arguing parents at home and arrogant jerks in school. As a child, he presents as being shy, impulsive, and having tantrums. At the age of 4, Dahmer had a double hernia operation. He suffered from so much pain because of that he asked his mother if the doctors could cut off his penis. Between age 6 and 8, Jeffrey's family moved 3 times to other towns, and that provoked confusion, alienation, and feelings of restlessness within him. He remained unattached during his childhood, and he never really bonded with anyone. During elementary school, he was socially isolated, and he only had very superficial friends. He was regarded by other children as being a little bit odd and a little bit bizarre. Dahmer claimed that during his adolescence he was prone to violent fits of anger and occasional rage, and said that his deceitful behaviour was frequently reprimanded at home. He told his court-appointed psychiatrist that his father's strict demands and his mother's unpredictable and argumentative behaviour towards both his father and himself angered him. He said that he had private fantasies about the destruction of himself and others who became too close to him. By moving around a lot and feeling very isolated, Dahmer never really learns the finer social skills to be able to develop appropriate relationships and friendships. He may have wanted to be close to his father, but he worked a lot and he was studying for a doctorate. He never really got the chance to develop close bonds with his mum because she suffered with mental illnesses. Then he had a very painful hernia which required surgery at the age of 4, and his brother came along when he was 5. All of these things were barriers that led him to being able to not develop appropriate interpersonal relationships. As he went through school, he was behind his peers in social skills, which led to feelings of insecurity, low self-esteem and isolation. From an early age, Dahmer showed an interest in dead animals. His fascination with dead animals might have begun when, at the age of 4, he saw his father removing animal bones from beneath their family home. His father had spoken about his fascination with dead animals and says that he wouldn't have encouraged any of it if he'd have known. But really, how could he have? It's only in retrospect that we can look back and put the pieces of these jigsaws together for Dahmer. In high school, he was very shy and quiet, but he frequently did things for attention. And this was one of the things that was probably well represented in the Netflix series. He would take scotch to school and drink it while he was there. In his early teens, he had a brief relationship with another teenage boy, although they never had intercourse together. He began fantasising about dominating and controlling a completely submissive male partner in his early to mid-teens. He had masturbatory fantasies surrounding that, which gradually evolved to focusing on the chest and the torso of people. At the age of 16, Dahmer conceived a fantasy of rendering unconscious a particular male jogger that he found attractive, but he failed to go through with that planned attack. You can quite clearly then see the steps that led him to the murderous point in his life. He continued to drink and he graduated high school during the time that his parents divorced. Dahmer's mother was awarded custody of the youngest boy, and Dahmer continued to live at home after both parents had left. And this is when he committed his first murder. The Netflix show how he was enlisted in the army and then discharged. He lived with his father and his stepmother initially, and then with his grandmother. Less than a year after his drunken disorderly arrest, Dahmer was convicted for an indecent exposure incident at Wisconsin Fair Park, and that was covered on the Netflix series quite well. It was around 1995 that he steals the torso of a mannequin and performs sexual acts with it before his grandmother discovered it and threw it out. I thought this was quite a poignant moment in the Netflix series. It's the culmination of feelings of loneliness, abandonment, self-loathing, inability to socially interact well, and difficulty forming relationships. He already knew that he was gay, and his sexual desires could never be rebuked by an inanimate object such as the mannequin that he had. In 1986, Dahmer was arrested again. This time he was charged with disorderly conduct for masturbating in front of two 12-year-old boys. At the time, he claimed that he'd been urinating, but later did admit to the crime. Netflix shows him receive a 1-year sentence for that. However, in real life, this was served on probation, and Dahmer had to go to counselling for that. Netflix did accurately show Dahmer visiting the bathhouses and drugging several people, leading to a ban from these places. Psychologically, his desires were evolving. He didn't know how to socialise. He masturbated to gay porn. He enjoyed performing acts on inanimate objects. Then he conducted sexual acts on men at the bathhouse, which he drugged to become submissive. It's simply an evolution of behaviour. His psychiatric conditions were formed over time. Each step was just another building block put into place for him. Dahmer told one psychiatrist that he didn't think highly of himself during childhood and adolescence. And that was probably the beginning of the low self-esteem that he later claimed to experience. He described himself as a loner who frequently became upset with his classmates and others who teased him, but he never got into fights. He was unable to express his anger openly for fear of retaliation. That inability might have been an expression of his lack of effective coping skills and associated lack of social capacities, inferiority, as well as a lack of external locus control. This was about power over others and complete domination. It's likely to be fueled by a combination of its inability to communicate or socialise effectively, his homosexual tendencies fueled by pornographic material, his ability to have sexual desires towards an object, his discovery that he could drug men to make them unconscious while performing sexual acts on them. All of these factors combined to create a man who'd experienced rejection to discover that he could actually overpower, drug and kill men. Becker, one of the psychiatric doctors who assessed him, diagnosed Dahmer as a necrophiliac, although that Dahmer had informed her that he preferred comatose sexual partners to deceased ones 75% of the time. He suggests that he didn't want dead people then. He preferred comatose sexual partners so he could feel the warmth of their skin as he performed the sexual acts on them. But the reality of it is, he was not likely to be bothered if the person was alive or dead. He showed traits of being a psychopath, and he's very unlikely to feel any empathy towards his victims. Collecting and exploring roadkill, stripping and preserving bones, dissecting and skinning animals fueled his fantasy of picking up and overpowering a hitchhiker, drugging men to incapacitate them and then killing them. These aren't emotive events. These are more of, I wonder what would happen if. Whilst only being concerned with fulfilling his own needs and desires. I suspect that the act of killing, cannibalism and necrophilia were attempts to really have these men, literally inside his body, with complete power and control over them, right down to having the power to take their life. I hope that you found this psychological analysis interesting and informative. If so, please like, comment, share and subscribe. See you next time. Bye for now.